These are back on KVNU. Hear every game along with the best coverage before and afterwards on News Talk KVNU, the home again for the Aggies.
KVNU News Time is 5:03. I'm Bill Walter with this news update. A 33-year-old Logan man was arrested Saturday after allegedly beating a woman during a domestic dispute, according to law enforcement. Justin Edward Stewart was booked into the Cache County Jail, where he remains held pending formal charges. According to an arrest affidavit, Logan City police officers were called to a domestic dispute early Saturday morning. A dispatch operator had received a 911 call and listened as a female and male were arguing. The female was heard telling the man to get away from her. She later said the suspect had hit her in the face and she could not see out of one eye. When police arrived on the scene, an officer found a woman crying with injuries to her face. The alleged victim's left eye and forehead were swollen. She was treated by paramedics and taken to the hospital, where doctors determined she had several fractures to her face. Officers questioned the suspect, later identified as Stewart. He said he got into a fight with the woman that turned physical. He claimed the alleged victim was hitting him and that he had a right to defend himself. He also admitted to drinking 7 beers, according to the probable cause statement. Several neighbors told police they could hear Stewart holding down the woman. Police contacted the alleged victim at the hospital later. She explained how Stewart began arguing with her as she was trying to go to sleep. Inside her bedroom, he allegedly got on top of her, held her down, and punched her. He later headbutted her as she was trying to flee. According to jail records, Stewart was booked on suspicion of committing felony aggravated kidnapping and aggravated assault, along with misdemeanors for violating a jail release agreement, intoxication, and disorderly conduct. He will likely be arraigned in Logan's 1st District Court this week on formal charges. KVNU News Time is 5:05. KVNU weather for tonight. Mostly clear skies is our forecast, and the low overnight in the upper 50s. Sunny and hot, mid-90s, around 94, 95 degrees tomorrow. And then sunny, cooler on Wednesday, high around 83. It's been to 90 this afternoon. It's 88 right now at KVNU. If your trees and shrubs are growing like crazy and blocking your view or posing a potential hazard, call Whole Tree Care. They trim, shape, and remove trees. Call 435-760-6587. KVNU News Time is 8:06. Several people were taken into custody after a shooting at an apartment complex in Orem. Officers responded to the scene at Midtown 360 at about 1:15 Saturday morning. They reported finding evidence of the shooting outside the buildings, and the Metro SWAT team was deployed. A search warrant was served on an apartment unit where a suspect was located. Since then, police said several other people were taken into custody. No critical injuries were reported, but several did have some injuries from the incident. And the driver of a motorcycle died and one passenger was hospitalized after a motorcycle crash in Weber County. Officials said the driver was traveling northbound at a high rate of speed at 9350 west near 450 south at about 1240 Sunday morning. They said the driver failed to negotiate a curve in the road and crashed into 2 parked cars. The driver, who was not immediately identified, was pronounced dead at the scene. A passenger of the motorcycle was transported to a local hospital with serious injuries. KVNU News Time is 5:07. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Fall is the best time to plant, and at Anderson Seed and Garden, it's time for our cash and carry sale. This is Market Anderson's. We have marked down all remaining trees, shrubs, evergreens, and even our vines to 40% off. But if you pay with cash, you save an additional 10% off your purchase price during our annual fall cash and carry sale. That's 50% off a wide selection of top-notch plants, all in stock right now. Get them before they're gone, but hurry while the selection is best, and don't forget to bring your cash. Anderson Seed and Garden, 69 West Center in Logan.
To protect his home and family from disaster, Steve used courage, wisdom, and his camera phone.
That should do it.
Way to go, Steve! By simply taking digital pictures of his family's important documents, Steve can always have them stored safely online, no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
You've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. You have to carefully monitor your health for the rest of your life. And you have an increased risk of developing cardiovascular disease.
Cut. Take 2. Action.
You've been diagnosed with a new purpose: to fight for the amazing life you made for yourself. To look that risk of heart disease square in the face and say, no, not me. You've been given a new opportunity to live. Get started at NoDiabetesByHeart.org.
The Aggies are returning home. Beginning this season, USU football and basketball will be back on KVNU.
Touchdown, Utah State!
Listen to every game, static-free at 102 FM, 610 AM, and online at kvnutalk.com or the KVNU mobile app.
It's recovered by Utah State, and the Aggies get the touchdown.
The season begins September 2nd when Utah State travels to Iowa to face the Hawkeyes. Join us in welcoming the Aggies back to KVNU, the home again for the Aggies.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. I showed up late for a family camping trip this weekend in order to make some time for the Rocky Mountain kickoff. I've never been before. I think this is like the 7th year, I believe, and growing in attendance every year. But man, if you get a chance to do this when they do it next year, it's usually within the first few weeks of the actual high school football season starting.
Yeah.
And they do
but
it.
But not the first, it's still preseason.
Yeah, it's still considered preseason.
Yeah.
But they've, a lot of the schools have had a game or two when it happens, usually. Anyway, it was really fun to watch. It was kind of, so the teams, I think because they maybe felt, it being outside of the regular schedule, that they felt a little bit like strutting maybe or showing off a little bit. Not in a don't take it serious kind of way, or overly aggressively celebrating a touchdown or thing like they do in the NFL. It's
spike the ball,
spiking the ball, and
mugging for the cameras.
No, it was like I don't know if maybe the coaches were experimenting too. Maybe they were putting people in different places or putting people in that maybe that wouldn't normally be, trying to feel out their teams, ahead of the season actually getting underway. Either way, it was back-to-back pretty exciting football games. These were aggressively fought, and the winners deserve the win. Sorry to Mountain Crest for that. It was Mountain Crest fought so hard against Pocatello, but man, Pocatello just they were both having a good offensive night, but Pocatello, a smaller team, at least from my vantage point of the field, they were just shutting Mountain Crest down.
So is it? So there's a high school just known as Pocatello High School, because I know they have several in that area.
Yeah, Pocatello High School Thunder, I believe. But yeah, they just were shutting Mountain Crest down. Their defense was just like a wall, and smaller guys too, smaller than Mountain Crest. But yeah, good games. Ridgeline played as well, and if you get a chance to see this in the future, it's very much worth seeing. Yeah, the Pocatello Thunder is what they're known as, Pocatello High School.
I see them here online.
But it was honestly just a really fun thing to see, and then back-to-back games. And of course, the high school games are a little shorter; they move a little faster. Well, they move a lot faster in the NFL, but they move faster than college too, and it's just a fun night. But I did want to say this. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. So Mountain Crest, towards the end of their game, they were fighting so hard. Again, they were behind. They had an opportunity. It wasn't over for them, but the clock was ticking, and they were fighting so hard. And it was really crowded. And you all know, if you've ever left an Aggie game up there at Maverick Stadium, it's a bit of an ordeal. Wait. Yeah. And so, it's coming down. It's kind of obvious how the game's going to end, but there's still an opportunity for Mountain Crest. And the team they're turning around because the Pocatello fans are just plugged in. They are so loud. Fewer in number and so loud. And because they're excited, they're ahead. The clock's ticking down, and they didn't expect to win, as I understand it. And so the Mountain Crest players are turning around to the crowd and trying to get them hyped. Throwing their hands up, trying to get the crowd on their feet like Pocatello is, trying to get people cheering and everything. And what they see, it was the saddest thing. What they see instead are a bunch of people leaving early to beat the rush out of the parking lot. Just filing a single line of people for the last 5 minutes of that game, steadily up the stairs out of the stadium, and that's what. And you could see. So they turn around and they're trying to get the crowd hyped. They're throwing their hands up. They're trying to get everybody excited.
All they see are the Pocatello fans.
Yeah, and then you just see it was probably 5 or 6 of the Mountain Crest team, the players there on the sidelines, turn around to do this to get the crowd hyped, and they see all these people leaving, and their hands just drop. But they stay facing the stadium, so they've obviously noticed the crowd exiting. And I'm throwing this out there. We don't often do sports on the show, but I want to throw this out there because this is a cultural thing I'm going to throw out there. But, these kids are playing hard. They have fought throughout this full game for the points they have and the points they're hoping to get before that is over. And I'm not saying the disappointment of seeing the crowd leave to save themselves a couple of minutes waiting in traffic to get out. And granted, it was late. It was after 10 o'clock by the time that second game ended. But it's a Friday night. You can stay up that late. I'm just saying, maybe culturally, maybe we should all think about this, And I'm biased. I find this irritating. I watched, Bill, you and I talked about, we ran into each other there at Journey, the tribute band at the final night of the fair. You and I sat and watched that. Your wife Meg as well there, and it was fun. It was a good crowd, and people started packing up their chairs during the last song, which was of course "Don't Stop Believing," because they want to get out before everybody else. And that always kind of irritates me because you're not really saving yourself that much time, and you're missing the end. You know why? It makes no sense to me. I've seen people do it in movies. Get up and leave with a few minutes left because they can guess the ending or something. I've never understood being in that big of a hurry that you cheat yourself out of the full experience because you want to be in the parking lot 2 minutes less than everyone else at most. But that Friday night, when the Mountain Crest players turn around. And again, they're throwing their hands in the air. They're trying to get everybody hyped, and then you can kind of see this moment.
So what was the score? How far down were they at that point?
I don't remember exactly the score. 6. I think
so the game was still in reach.
Yeah, they were still in play. I mean, it was a long shot, but there was still an opportunity. It would have required an interception and some luck, but it was still there because that's how they got behind. Was Pocatello's stroke of luck with an interception. And they were playing so hard. But, yeah, so these 5 or 6 players, maybe more, but 5 or 6 in front of me that I could see, turn around, and they're throwing their hands in the air, trying to get the crowd hyped, and then you can see the moment when they see everybody leaving instead. Because they're still facing the stadium, throwing their hands in the air, and then all of a sudden their hands just kind of stop and drop to their sides. And they stand there and look into the stadium for a few seconds, watching people file out. with 5 minutes left to go in the game, and they just turn around. And that team, Mountain Crest, never again tried to get the crowd as hyped as the Pocatello fan base was there in the stadium. Everybody's on the same side, so it was
sad.
Yeah, it was really sad. And I'll be honest with you, this doesn't happen to me often. This is one of the first times in a long, long time I've been very disappointed with Cache Valley. One of the first times that I thought, that is so sad, to not sit there, to at least have the respect to stay another 5 minutes, and it's football, so that's probably going to be more like 10. I get it.
Well, it's
but
some possible factors now.
It was late.
The Mountain Crest game was the second game, right?
Yeah,
so
and it was
kickoff was
after 10.
Yeah,
at
so
this
it was
point.
like an hour and a half.
Yeah,
from later than when they usually play,
and maybe
on Friday night.
To be fair, maybe those people had been there since the first game, the Ridgeline game that started at 6:30. So I get it. It's been a long night, but I felt so bad for those kids on the Mountain Crest team. Just it was that moment where you could see they realized the crowd had given up on them. The crowd had said, "This is over. They're not going to do it. We're out. We're going to beat the traffic. That's more important to us." And I'm just saying, if you bothered to show up to show support for these local high school teams, and there's 5 minutes left on the clock, and a path for them to do it, at least tie it.
Yeah.
It's not over.
I mean, I could see if
stay
it was
for those players, stay for the kids.
If it was
and get loud.
Pocatello up 49-0.
Yeah.
And there's
at that point, I don't think the team's even going to bother.
Players just want to get the game.
Yeah,
over
they
want
to leave too. Yeah, no, this was close enough, and there was still, like I say, still a route for Mountain Crest, and that just broke my heart when I saw those kids turn around and try to get the crowd hyped, because you can just hear on the wings where the Pocatello folks are sitting. You can just hear they are so loud, and they're drowning out cheers for Mountain. Whenever Mountain Crest does get ahead, like there was a late first down, an unexpected first down. It looked unlikely they got their first down, and there was a lot of cheering for Mountain Crest. Nothing like what would happen for Pocatello, because those fans were amped. And it was not a wipeout. It was not over. There was still, and the other thing I'm going to say too, this is pure conjecture, of course, but if the crowd had stayed and cheered loudly for Mountain Crest, that could, this does influence the gameplay.
Oh, teams feed off the momentum.
Yeah.
They feed off the energy.
Yeah, if they can feel the excitement from the crowd, and they're sitting there thinking, okay, they think we can do it. They think we've got a shot. Let's fight. But instead to turn around and try and get the crowd hyped, but instead just see nothing but butts and chairs headed up out of the stadium, all to save a couple minutes getting out of the parking lot. I was so disappointed. And if anyone out there has a kid on Mountain Crest's team, I just want to apologize for that little scene in that last 5 minutes of the game. And it wasn't everybody. Most of the crowd stayed, but I would say a good 20-30% started filing out with 5 minutes still on the clock.
Okay. So there were some that hung in there.
Most stayed, and hats off to them. I stayed. I felt like I had to at that point after seeing this heartbreaking scene. But, man, the visual disappointment in the body language of those players when they saw the butts and chairs walking up the steps out of the stadium instead of being able to get them hyped, they were leaving. That was just, So apologies to the team for everyone that decided to leave early Friday night instead of stay and cheer for you. And hats off to the rest of the crowd, the majority of the crowd that did stay and see that game through. Even though in the end they were not able to pull it off, they did lose by a few points to Pocatello, and Pocatello deserved it, honestly. Their defense was just amazing. But, I felt so bad for those players that they had to see that and see people, finding saving 2 minutes in the parking lot more important than staying to help amp up this team with a shot still ahead of them to win. Yeah, just so think about that next time. Ask yourself, is that time you're going to save getting out of the parking lot a bit before everybody else worth potentially negatively influencing the outcome of the game for your local team, especially a high school team of kids who you just watched fight so hard to try and win? Yeah. Think about it. 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
Tuesday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton show, the continued fallout of Donald Trump's criminal charges, and we will continue to break down the ongoing discussion surrounding, guess what, the big Republican debates. Plus, Buck.
Take a look at what's going on in New York City, where more migrants showing up and the budget for this getting higher and higher. People are getting sick of it. We'll discuss on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM and 610 AM.
Heart valve disease is more common than you or your doctor may think, especially as you get older. It's serious but treatable with the proper diagnosis. If you or a loved one are experiencing shortness of breath, fatigue, chest tightness or pressure, dizziness or fainting, talk to your doctor and ask for an echocardiogram to get diagnosed early and enjoy your best quality of life. Learn more at askforecho.com. That's ask4echo.com.
One smile is great, but one smile in a community of smiles is so much better. A smile has a secret power that most people don't know about. A smile multiplies. It spreads from one person to the next, stretching across entire groups of people. Smile Train knows this and is proud to be creating a wave of smiles across the cleft lip and palate community in over 70 countries. Patients, doctors, advocates, fundraisers. Collectively, our smiles are a celebration of the transformed lives of over 1.5 million children. Learn how Smile Train is helping the cleft lip and palate community at smiletrain.org/learn. Smile Train, changing the world one smile at a time.
Welcome back to KVNU's For the People. Listener via the chat here. You can chat with us using the Google Chat, either app or website. And our handle, as the kids say, is KVNUFTP. Or just enter the email address kvnuftp@gmail.com to start a chat. And you can get through to us that way. You can also email us, call us, of course, 753-5868. But a couple of people listening and chiming in through the chat on this. Well, I'll just say this. A couple of I'm going to call weak defenses of leaving early to save time getting out of the parking lot. Because I get it. I've done it before in some scenarios. But I... this was not one of those situations. This was a game that wasn't over. These were kids that were excited, and they were basically begging the crowd to get louder than the opposing team's crowd.
The game was not decided.
It wasn't decided.
Not a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. I mean, it was a likely conclusion, granted, but it was not over for sure. There was a rout, and they wanted the crowd to get louder than the Pocatello fans, and Mountain Crest team players turned around to do that, and instead saw nothing but butts and chairs being hauled up out of that stadium, and I was so sad for those kids. And again, you could see in their body language they noticed too, and they just gave up. They didn't try to get the crowd rallied again after that in the remaining minutes of the game. Just too bad. So a listener saying, maybe they had somewhere important to be the next morning, and if it was already after 10 o'clock, yeah, okay. A handful of people, I could see. This was. I didn't count heads, but I would guess based on what the stadium looked like after for the last, 3 or 4 minutes of the game, I'd say it's about 25-30% of the people there left in the last 5 minutes, called it and left, just as the kids turned around to get everybody hyped and louder than Pocatello's fans. And yeah, not that many people had somewhere important to be, at least not somewhere important that where another 5, 10, 15 minutes of game watching and supporting those kids would have mattered. So I'm sorry, not buying that one. But Another listener said, I also don't get it when people leave early. I've seen this happen at concerts. I've seen this happen at outdoor festivals. Is it really that awful to sit in traffic? Well, I would actually say yes, but here's my cheat. Rather than leave early and miss the band's last song or big finale, I saw it at the fireworks shows. Remember when Freedom Fire used to happen, I was at that one year, and I remember a bunch of people in the middle of the finale, the biggest part of the fireworks show, packing up their stuff and leaving so they can get out of the parking lot first. You know,
they missed the finale.
You missed the finale. I know. This is shooting yourself in the foot. So here's my cheat for this. Stay late. That's your other alternative. You know,
because people will clear out. You're still there, and then when you leave, it's clear sailing out of the parking lot.
Not so late that Logan City Police is asking you why you're loitering. Not that late, but if you're talking about you think this through. You're talking about a difference of 10, maybe 15 minutes. So unless you have to be to work at 6 a.m. and it's already midnight or something like that, you probably can afford that 15 minutes of just casually leaving the stadium or the concert venue or the football game where the high school kids are begging you to get excited for them, to give them some extra energy to win the game, and instead you're loading up your stuff and leaving so you can get out of the parking lot a little faster. No. If you're worried about sitting in traffic, if you're worried about crowded parking lots and the potential for a fender bender, walk slowly out of the stadium. Let everyone else get out before you. Stop, visit the bathroom, clean some garbage out of your pockets. Stop. I mean, that view on the west side of Maverick Stadium is amazing. Stop and take a few photos. Let everyone else rush out of there, and then just casually walk to your vehicle and follow the last few cars out of the parking lot. And not miss the end of the thing you paid to come and see, which makes no sense to me when it comes to those people who leave early to beat the cars. Anyway,
I mean, I've left games early, but it's always when it's out of reach. The game is out of reach. But I do feel bad because the players, they're like they can't leave.
No,
and they see people leaving, and they have to stay. They have to play out the game. They can't just say, okay, well, you guys win, we forfeit.
That is now I was at one game. This was a college game, but it wasn't football. It was a soccer game. But I was at a game when the crowd left in protest. The coach had made some. I won't get into it. It was a complicated story. The coach had made some really bad decisions, and this tied into some petty squabbles that had happened between the coach and a couple of parents of the players, and so those kids were being sort of punished for the parents getting into an argument with the coach. It was a really childish thing, and people were so mad because it definitely affected these are some of the stars of the team. This affected the outcome of the game, or was at least, and I saw people leave in protest at that game, and I fully support that kind of thing. But if you're sticking up for the players because the parents and the coach are being immature, by all means, stomp out of that stadium and teach the coach and the parents a lesson. But what I saw Friday night at the end of that Mountain Crest game, the body language on those kids when they turn around trying to get the crowd all excited, and then you can just see them kind of go slack and slump when they realize what they see instead is everybody exiting the stadium 5 minutes early, calling the game over when the players were hoping for a little extra juice
letting
from the crowd.
Air out of the balloon.
Yeah, just sad thing to see. So, all right. We'll finally get to it. I've been promoting it since the top of the first hour. The YouGov survey on news consumption is really revealing this year because instead of just their annual survey, which is included in the publication today, they went back over the last 8 years of surveying news consumption, and they have some trends that they visualized. It is a fascinating look at how things changed abruptly, and everything was going to be different. And then as the dust settled, everything's actually kind of a lot the same. But the trends sort of explain why. We'll talk about it after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KBNU News Time is 5:31, and the news is brought to you by You&I Furniture. The Republican special election scheduled for August 30th for the post of Cache County Republican will be a five-way contest, or Cache County Recorder, that is. In addition to early filing candidates Tennille Johnson and Riker Lowe, the latecomers in the running for that post are Dion Hunsaker, also Garrett Mansell, and Heather Lenig. The candidate filing period for the county post opened August 7th, shortly after former county recorder Devron Anderson submitted his resignation. That filing period closed on August 22nd. The candidates had an opportunity to meet with fellow Republicans and answer questions during a meeting that was held last Thursday at the Cache County Historic Courthouse. The special election to fill the county recorder's post by Cache County Republicans will be held on Wednesday at Mount Logan Middle School. The candidate selected to replace Anderson will fill out the remainder of his term ending in 2024. A 46-year-old Smithfield man has been arraigned on a charge of assaulting a hospital nurse while she was attempting to provide him medical care, according to law enforcement. Antonio Cuevas made his initial appearance in Logan's 1st District Court last Monday. He was charged with one count of forcible sexual abuse, a second-degree felony. According to Logan City Police Assistant Chief Curtis Hooley, Cuevas was taken to the emergency room of Logan Regional Hospital on June 7th. He was reportedly suffering from a mental health episode. While being treated, Cuevas allegedly grabbed the nurse's chest as she was trying to assist him. He then began inappropriately touching himself, Hooley explained. During Monday's court appearance, Judge Spencer Walsh ordered Cuevas, who is currently out of jail, to have no contact with the alleged victim. He also ordered him to appear again in court on September 25th. And Salt Lake County and its partners are trying to spread the word and promote enrollment in the Affordable Connectivity Program, or ACP. ACP's primary goal is to get lower-income households either a discount on Internet access or free service. Colin Mosquito with Mill Creek Promise has conducted outreach events around Mill Creek to spread the word. Colin says that there are a number of barriers that inhibit those who need it most from signing up.
So there's a language barrier, and there's also a mobility barrier, issues of transportation, the ability to understand how to sign up for internet, especially for something as complex as ACP.
The Affordable Connectivity Program was expanded through the federal infrastructure bill and now offers a $30 monthly benefit toward high-speed in-home broadband service and a $100 benefit for devices. KBNU News Time is 5:35.
You&I Furniture has always been here to give you great value for your money. When it comes to home furnishings, it really is always a better buy at You&I. And right now, You&I is closing out last year's model mattresses. Closeouts on new models and displays too. Memory foam, innerspring, and hybrids from a number of different name brand manufacturers. And ask You&I to show you this popular copper-infused mattress that sleeps cooler. And did you know You&I has a good selection of sheets and mattress protectors too? You&I Furniture, over 90 years in downtown Logan. There's always a better buy at You&I.
A faculty member is dead and a suspected campus shooter has been arrested at the U of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. No IDs on either or a possible reason for the shooting from university officials, including Police Chief Brian James.
Based on witness information at the scene, UNC police were able to identify a suspect, and after a search of the surrounding area, this suspect was taken into custody.
Norfolk Southern says it's dealing with a system issue that is delaying or halting trains across the U.S. Not clear what it is. Amtrak telling customers a number of its trains are affected because they use those tracks. Tropical storm Idalia close to hurricane strength. The storm surge could be deadly along the Florida Gulf Coast Wednesday, says Governor Ron DeSantis.
We have activated the full 5,500 National Guardsmen available in our state to respond to the storm. They have access to a lot of different assets, both on the ground and in the air.
Drone destroyed by Russian air defense systems on duty in eastern Russia, says the Russian Ministry of Defense. Chuck Sievertson, ABC News.
KVNU weather for tonight, mostly clear skies is our forecast, low in the upper 50s, and then sunny, hot tomorrow, mid-90s, but cool down for Wednesday, mostly sunny and lower 80s for the high. We've been to 90. Right now it's 88 at KVNU. Mount Logan Laundry has 55 and 80-pound washers to make your stay much shorter, located in Logan and Brigham City. You can always get more news at CashValleyDaily.com.
This is Gary Ricks, your heating and air conditioning contractor. We hired 6 other companies to do the required annual tune-ups to help us learn and improve. Of the 6, 3 didn't show up and the other 3 were hours late. If Gary Ricks Services is later than an hour from your scheduled time, we will deduct the service fee. None of them replaced my air filter. 2 of them didn't even look at it. Gary Ricks Services provides a standard filter with our tune-ups. None of them followed maintenance standards. Gary Ricks Services annual tune-ups increase efficiency, capacity, and life of your equipment, which makes you comfortable and happy. 2 of the companies told me from the sounds they heard I needed expensive repairs anywhere from $700 to a new system at $15,000. At Gary Ricks Services, we will never tell you something has failed unless there is proof from testing the parts. Call Gary Ricks Services today and get our ultimate tune-up for a buy one get one free limited time deal. We will tune up your air conditioner and your furnace for the cost of one. If your system stops working during its season, Gary Ricks Services will return for free.
It's youth hockey time for boys and girls ages 4 to 14. Youth hockey signups are at cashhockey.com. That's cashhockey.com. The season starts September 13th and runs through mid-March. 6+ months of hockey fun. If you're interested in youth hockey for any skill level, go to cashhockey.com. That's cashhockey.com and sign up today. Space is limited. Cache Valley Youth Hockey. It's where the cool kids play.
My husband had a gun. Him and his friends would go shooting. When he stored the gun, he didn't know. In a million years, we never thought that Emily could. There's a hole in our family that can never, ever be filled.
65 Americans a day die by gun suicide. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn more at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by Brady and the Ad Council.
I'm all over the place today, but I was today years old when I learned that mosquito is actually a common surname. Bill reading a news story there with mentioning Colin Mosquito's name, and I assume that's how it's pronounced.
It's spelled
exactly.
The same.
I told Bill, I said, hey, that can't be right. Colin Mosquito? We got something wrong, didn't we? And so I just did some quick Googling. It's actually a really common surname. Most common these days, at least in the Philippines, but it at one point was most common in Uganda and Nigeria and South Africa as well. But now it's most common in the Philippines and the United States, and has evolved over the years into various different forms like mosquita, mosquita, mosqueda, makita, muscati, moscati, just a whole bunch of different versions of it that originally were mosquito.
You wonder, sometimes things that people discover are named after them.
Yeah.
So that makes me wonder if somebody with the last name Mosquito at one point discovered this annoying little fly that sucks blood from you.
I'm typing and searching as fast as we can. Oh, no. Apparently, mosquito referring to the
insect,
flying insect, which, by the way, West Nile virus, how many here in Cache Valley now? I think it's 3 or 4 different cases that have been detected. So, yeah, keep an eye on that. And it's that season, right? But mosquito, the flying insect, comes from Mosquetas. Native Hispanic Americans also called them zancudos, but mosquito is a Spanish or Portuguese word meaning little fly. So, and again, in old school Spanish, zancudos rather than mosquetas. Interesting. It can also mean long-legged in Spanish, and oftentimes it appears that's where the surname came from. So tall people. Interesting. Was not planning on this tangent.
Most people I know think the name means the fly that deserves to die.
Yeah. Well, they're so irritating. I had a few bites myself, but it's also a name that apparently is common in certain Navajo tribes. Due to intermarriage that has happened over the years in some big families there. That's interesting. I did not know. Learn something every day. Speaking of that, okay, I've been plugging this since the start of the show, and then something keeps popping up to distract me and keep us on other topics. But I really want to talk about this because it's fascinating. YouGov does a survey every year. They've done it since 2015, and it's basically a general news consumption survey. All year long, a couple of disclaimers on this, as should be the case with any survey or poll when it's discussed. The weak spots. The weak spots in a YouGov survey is their online surveying. But when they run it for a year, that kind of counter. Normally, when someone says this was an online voluntary survey, don't even listen to the results. It is not worth your time and tells you bupkis. With YouGov, they've learned how to actually make online surveying an effective snapshot. Because, one, they don't survey horse race politics. I mean, they do, but that's not their bread and butter, because that's a different thing. It's very difficult to predict an election outcome with online surveying. But it's also generally, you see this sometimes, local TV news was really bad about this. Go to our website and take our poll. And then they talk about the poll the next day. And the problem is that creates an impression of a certain majority of the public with an opinion, and you have no idea. What you have a snapshot of are the number of people who bothered to come to your website and express their opinion. And there might be a reason they all did that. Maybe because they're that angry about the issue you're discussing. So you're going to get a more negative opinion as your majority. It's a horrible way to gauge public opinion, and that's why no credible pollsters use it for predicting elections or gauging public opinion on specific policies. But YouGov has learned how to use online surveying to build trends and map trends. And that's where they've really not only found their, as a polling service, their niche, but they've also revealed some really cool stuff. Because, again, they're mapping trends by constantly surveying. So they're not looking for the results of this survey and then saying, oh, everybody hates Facebook. What they're looking for is how many people are using Facebook now compared to how many people in 2015 were using Facebook. And so then they can visualize the trends. So the YouGov surveying is probably one of the most extensive looks at news consumption because of that, because they survey year-round, and they've done it since 2015. Again, they can't tell you the number of people based on their surveys that are consuming news X way or this way, but what they can tell you is how much the percentages in the reporting in their survey have changed over the years. That makes sense. I hope so, because that's the best I can do as far as setting this up and explaining why the poll is credible. But so 10, 15 years ago, all we heard was that, we saw what Google was doing to newspapers. It was basically sucking the energy out of the newspaper's print and subscription business model, and it killed a lot of newspapers. It led to a lot of news deserts in hyper, local news deserts throughout. Some in Utah, even Gunnison used to have its own newspaper, and now they have nothing. No media in Gunnison. And that's happened a lot in the Intermountain West. We're lucky here in Cache Valley, of course. We have both statewide media that spends, puts some focus on Cache Valley because we're got a large enough population. And, of course, we're here. CacheValleyDaily.com's here. And the newspaper's still operating, on a skeleton crew, it seems like, but still here. So we're lucky that way. We've still got media operating in the valley. Rich County, Box Elder County, on the other hand, they are, so it's a troublesome thing, and that's why YouGov started doing this. In 2015, they said, this is bad. What we're seeing, the trends we're seeing is bad, and we want to be able to inform both the public but also policymakers, the media organizations, and media environment itself on the trends so that we're not taken by surprise by this. Because if we get to a situation where every state has one media organization trying to do it all, that's problematic. And then someone buys that media organization and puts their thumb on the scale, but it's the only one in the state. Yeah. Now, that has come close to happening in some places. Luckily, it didn't happen, but close. Again, we've been lucky. Throughout the state of Utah, in general, we're lucky, but other areas not so much. So this is a serious thing, and they started mapping and tracking and surveying news consumption trends for this very purpose. I started ignoring them a few years ago because it was basically telling you the same thing over and over and over. And that story was all these predictions 10, 15 years ago that the internet, the podcasting, that social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snap, everything that's come along that year and since was just going to completely change everything. We heard it here. Podcasting, I had so many people when I told them that I had the opportunity to host an afternoon show on AM talk radio and FM talk radio. When I said talk radio, a lot of times the first thing people would say to me is, podcasting is going to be the end of talk radio. And I heard that so many times. And what we saw instead was that podcasting saw this huge surge, and it now settled back into a place where you could best describe podcasting as kind of, when it comes to news consumption, that's all we're talking about here. We're not talking about your favorite true crime podcaster. We're not talking about the fan podcast for your favorite movie franchise or TV series. Those are different, and that's just another form of entertainment, and it's not included in our discussion here. What I'm talking about is podcasting as it relates to the daily news cycle. What we found is podcast has a role as a supplemental source of information for going behind the headlines, for going deeper into a single issue, that may be mentioned with several issues in a news show or here on For the People, for example. We talk about as much as we can in 2 hours. Maybe there's a story that people want to hear more about. Then you can take a podcast and dig deeper into that one issue. And that's where podcasting has really found its niche and it's stabilized there. But again, what we didn't see was podcasting becoming the new way everyone was getting their news. So then along comes, social media, Twitter and Facebook first, but then eventually Instagram, Snap, and now TikTok, and why am I forgetting the other one right now? But anyway, it's what we've seen. So here are some of the trends, basically. And I would summarize them very simply. We saw a lot of people drift away from traditional media sources, broadcast television news, radio news, AM and FM radio news, and print journalism, newspapers, which are now mostly, we still call it print, but they're all websites now mainly. And we saw people drift. But then what we saw over the last 8 years, YouGov reports, is a return to home. So basically people went out for 3 or 4 years and said, and so then they would be asked, where do you get your news? And Twitter. I get all my news from Facebook. Well, YouGov shows in their surveying that when you dig down on this, no one really changed where they got their news. When it came to local news, they still got their news from local radio stations, from local newspapers, whether they were still printing or just a website. They were still getting their news from local 10 p.m. TV broadcast news. But they were accessing it through Twitter and Facebook. The news was never being generated by social media. It was being aggregated and shared and distributed by social media. That's why newspapers got hit hard by this, because distribution was one of their funding models. Whereas with radio and TV, distribution is the same as it's always been. We talk into microphones, goes out on these magic little invisible waves, and you hear it. That's my understanding. Am I getting the science of radio right there, Bill? Magic invisible waves? Pretty much sums it up, right?
The engineers might put it differently, but they talk over our heads most of the time anyway.
This is okay. So this is what was fascinating. So YouGov has seen since 2015 a steady incline trend, meaning more and more people every single year are saying, "I'm getting most of my news online." But YouGov points out that when you dig through the trends from 2015 to 2023, what you see is that, as a follow-up question, when you're getting your news online, who are you reading? Who are you listening to? Who are you watching? That never changed. So people are saying, when they say, I'm getting all my news online, they're getting to that news more and more often online. But it's still a clip of a radio broadcast. It's still a clip of a television news broadcast at 10 o'clock at night. It's still a link to an online story from a local newspaper. That never changed. We're just getting to it differently. That, to me, is so obvious and also so fascinating. But here's where things get weird. Because the up-and-coming generation... This threw me for a loop. If I had to predict, I would have been way off. So one of the things YouGov has basically confirmed is the dedicated app for every single news organization never caught on. This was pushed more so than anyone else by local broadcast news, television broadcast news. They were the ones that tried the hardest to make download our app, use our app, and only our app for news a thing. And what's happened is basically we've all got app burnout. We all feel like we have too many apps on our phones, too many things binging and buzzing throughout the day. I don't know. People who keep their phone off silent, I don't know how you do it. It makes me so anxious. But that's a thing now. There's an anxiety around that now, and what it means is people decided to start slimming down what they were putting on their phone, and also, even if they left it on their phone, what they were taking the time to use regularly. And so the independent news app for each and every news outlet never caught on. What they found is that the people who were first exposed to that, anyone age 35 and older right now, they've held steady. They all downloaded these independent news apps in 2015, and they still use them, or at least have them on their phones today. About half of news consumers surveyed, 52%, age 35 and older. Those under 35, though, in about 2018, said, nah, too much. I cannot have an app for every single news organization in my local news environment. I just can't do it. It's too much. And that number since 2018 has dropped to 14%. 14% of people under the age of 35 have apps on their phone for independent news organizations. Also in this survey, social media fragmentation. That basically, you have people on all these different apps, and they're using it for different things, and their adoption rate. So this is the final note I'll make on this YouGov survey, and then you should really go read it yourself, because some of the other visualizations are so enlightening. But this is the real kicker here. So again, backing up and going through all this step by step, no one changed the media and the news they're listening to, watching, or reading. What changed is how they're getting to it. And that lack of that misunderstanding, unfortunately, led to a lot of, especially legacy nationwide media organizations, making some really bad decisions, if you think about it. They made decisions that were based on the fact, everyone's getting their news online now. Let's change everything we're doing. Well, no, they're still getting the news from you. They're just getting to you through Twitter. That should have been so obvious, and yet it wasn't. for many people, especially large media organizations, cable news especially. Wow, did they drop the ball on this one. But here's the final thing to leave you with. This is an age breakdown of social media use. People who, again, have reported, I get my news through social media, but then as a follow-up question, when asked, what news are you getting through social media, it's discovered to be the traditional local sources. Statewide newspapers, statewide radio broadcasts, and statewide television broadcasts, and then even more so as you bring it more down to the local level, even young people. This was across almost all age groups. Everyone was still turning to their local as they had an option for at least, news sources. They're just finding those stories on Twitter, finding those stories on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. But this was really interesting to me. So news consumption via social media app. Last thing to get to here. The trends. Facebook. 2014, 80% of people using Facebook said they got their news, or 80% of avid news consumers got their news from Facebook. Today, in 2023, 21%. Those that held steady, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram, basically from 2014. Well, Telegram didn't start till 2016. But so since their inception to today, kind of holding steady. 15% for Telegram, about 50% of news consumers for Twitter and Snapchat as well. TikTok saw the biggest growth. They launched in 2019. They now account for about 40% of people under the age of 35, their daily news consumption. They're finding news stories on TikTok. So again, Facebook, losers in this one, down to 21% of news consumers after being 80% in 2014. Biggest winners, TikTok and Instagram. Twitter holding steady, Telegram holding steady. TikTok and Instagram have grown nearly threefold since their launches, respectively, as news consumption sources that people turn to find the local news stories they want to read. That's a fascinating evolution, and how you keep up with this, who knows? I've linked to the full YouGov survey on our Facebook page, and we'll be back right after this.
Hey, John Weiss here. At Heritage Ford in Tremont, we're your hometown dealer with the biggest deals. What does that mean? You'll get hometown service and better pricing than you'll see in any big city. That's why we created the Heritage ePrice experience. Check the price so that you can be sure you're getting the hometown deal.
Right now, you can get as low as 1.9% APR financing on select models. Some restrictions apply.
Come in and see your friends at Heritage Ford in Tremont. Get started at heritageeprice.com.
Serving overseas was just the beginning. We might be home from war, but our mission continues in communities all across the country. It's why we're out there in times of peace and crisis, providing meals to the hungry and supplies to the sick. It's why we're giving strength to those who are too weak and bringing resources to those without them. Service doesn't stop when we're done serving. It's what makes us the VFW. Learn more at vfw.org.
Also, check out in this YouGov story how people react and which apps they use, social media platforms they use when something affects them personally, like a local news disaster or a local, natural phenomenon disaster or health news during the pandemic. A fascinating look at how people are consuming news via social media these days. Link to it on our Facebook page. Thanks for tuning in. Dave Ram.